So Luke, when did you go in the Army?
2010.
2010.
Yep.
Yeah. And then you had 4 deployments to Afghanistan.
Yep.
So I know you probably can't give a whole lot of details, but how did those 4 deployments go? Because normally when we think of deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, we think of year-long, or in Iraq I think they even had like 15 or even 18 months.
Some of the National Guard guys would go in for really long periods of time.
Yeah. So, I mean, how did that work out for you then, 4 deployments in one, because you just did 1 enlistment, right, in the Army?
Yeah.
So 4 years in the Army. 4 deployments, how did that work out?
So it's the special operations realm in general, so SEALs, Green Berets, Rangers, whatever. They tend to have shorter deployments, especially when going to like Afghanistan, because the mission tempo is so high, and they're rotating.
Yeah.
Like, there's 3 Ranger battalions. They rotate, each one. That's their presence is there, across the whole country. Each platoon is in different areas.
Okay.
And they rotate first, second, third time.
Yeah.
And so, it's just because the mission tempo is so high in general.
Meaning that when you arrive in country and you're just going.
Yeah, I was just talking to my friend pretty recently about our first deployment, and we were just remembering how fast we got in country, and we're like, we didn't, it's like we got in country and we're setting up for our first mission, before you go to sleep or before you do anything, and then I don't even know if we did go to sleep before we went out on our first one.
Yeah.
But it was really very soon after we landed.
Yeah.
So
each of your deployments then would be about 4 months each?
Yeah, they're about, a little bit longer, some
like
tad shorter, some.
Yeah.
But the first one was really mission heavy. I did the most missions on my first one. I've been on somewhere over 100 missions total, and then I went on 55 missions on my first deployment. So
wow.
So that one was really busy, and it was a lot of it was the end of Al Qaeda's presence in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And that's not really a name here too often anymore. But and it was so that was part of the push, and it was just super busy, a lot different than my deployments after that. We did a lot of work in daytime, because all my deployments, you sleep in the day and work at night.
Yeah.
So first deployment, it would be like, you're going out so much that sometimes we do stuff in the day, which is somewhat atypical for a lot of,
Yeah.
But,
so let me just pause real quick. So now you're in country 2011?
Yeah, that was the very beginning of 2011. Yeah.
Okay. And 55 missions in that first deployment. In the what number would you guess, or maybe know the number? How many of those missions did you come into contact with the enemy?
Well, as far as firefights go, taking contact would be probably 10, 15 missions out of those. Okay. And then the rest is basically the goal is to we call them killer capture missions, but it's kind of the opposite. It's capture, kill, or just capture. I mean, we don't. You wouldn't ever fight someone or shoot someone if they had no intent to hurt you. It doesn't matter how bad they are. It doesn't matter. It's always capture first.
Plus, you can get intel from the living person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the goal would be to get as far into their house and on top of them before they even know what's going on.
So you guys would have intelligence from local. How does it work? You guys have intel.
Yeah.
And then based on that intel, you go out with how many guys? Maybe 15, 16?
You might have 25 shooters.
Okay.
You'll have a whole host of other people that are in a command and control element that are helping, and and some outside security. But yeah, so generally, you might have 50 people on the ground, but you're going to have an assault group of 25 people.
Oh, okay. And sort of walk us through a typical. If there was any such thing as a typical mission, but walk us. Walk us through a typical mission from. You go into do you start off in a ready room with sort of here's the intel and take it from there?
Yeah, so I can't talk a lot about the intel gathering, but you gather your intelligence, which we do. So no, people think special ops and Jason Bourne or something, and like people like telling you they're like, go kill this guy, and like you don't know who he is. It's you know, it's nothing like that. Like you know who he is, what he's done. You know, you've heard a lot of the phone conversations yourself.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. And you know, so we gather intel through, you know, various means, and then you know, so you wake up at around dinner time, you know, right when the sun's going down, and you like get up, you eat food, you know, you figure out if you're gonna go out that night. This is very typical. It doesn't always go like this, but figure out if you're gonna go out that night.
Yeah.
The one benefit of being in special operations in like Afghanistan or something is you get like you're in the middle of a big American base. I mean, we're not allowed to talk to them. They, you know, they don't know who we are, what we're doing, anything. They don't know.
Oh, you're not allowed to talk to the other soldiers or airmen on the base, really?
Unless it's work related. Unless it's like, you know, hey, like, you know, shoot that way or
Wow,
something.
but no fraternization.
No,
Yeah.
I'm talking. They don't know that you're in the army. They don't know. They know you're American. That's it.
So you're not in civvies though.
No, we're in.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're like that. No
Yeah.
patches. No, you know, no nothing. So
Sure, yeah.
basically, you know,
Okay.
clean. And
Yeah.
you know, and then so you wake up and we have really nice facilities. That's what I was kind of getting at. So you know,
Oh,
really
okay.
nice gym, really nice. You know, each squad sometimes would have a TV and an Xbox or something. You know, and like you know, you can play video games.
Mm-hmm.
You know, lots of decent food. Well, depending on what fob you're on, but for the most part. But so you get up, figure out you're going on a mission. You're going on a mission. You get like all the intelligence. Some of it you might know if you know what's going on. Some of it might be like a last minute thing. You know, depends on just the nature of who you're going after.
Yeah.
And then you go to your ready room, which is where you keep all your stuff. You know, and you have your little plywood cubbies of you know equipment and get ready.
That's
you
where your
know.
weapon is and
Yep.
all that stuff. Okay.
Yep, and then you do all the last minute studying. So if you're a crammer in college, then you might be good at this kind of stuff. You cram in all this information, names, you know, names, locations, you know, like, you know, you're like, oh, all of these guys are like running in and out of this doorway, but no one ever walks out of this doorway. So like, don't walk out of that door. Don't go through that doorway. It's just, you know, maybe they just don't like it. Probably they just don't like it. But maybe it's booby trapped, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You gotta study all these things. You gotta know because if you're we're a small enough element that if you're a new guy and your team leader goes down, you know, no one's gonna tell you, you know, like, you know, you'll get absorbed into the chain of commands in different ways. But in the moment, you know, you have to know that stuff, you know, and you have to make sure your guys know that. So you're getting drilled, you know, all the time about, you know, like names and who you're going after, or you know, if he's a gun runner, that's a lot different than an IED maker because you're going to have to be generally worried about different things, you know.
This gets back to something we were talking about in the previous discussion that, you know, I think it's especially true of special ops guys. If you're a special ops guy, you not only have to be physically tough, but you got to be smart.
Right, yeah.
Because there's just a lot of information. You need to have immediate recall and make the quick decisions, etc.
Yeah, you expect that a bit. When I was a team leader, you know, you expect that with your guys. I was never really like super hard on my guys. I was never really like in the sense that I didn't yell a whole lot. I was pretty relaxed in general. But I was not afraid to pull people off the manifest for a mission. I was not afraid to fire people. That's one of the biggest benefits of special operations actually, is that you can fire people.
Really?
If someone like sucks in the regular military, you can move them around, you can put them somewhere else, but unless they get like a court-martialable offense, you know, you can't do anything with them. But here, it changes the whole quality dynamic entirely just because you can fire them.
High degree of accountability.
Yeah.
What do you mean fire them? Just so you're not a ranger anymore?
Yeah.
Really?
You did all this stuff.
This guy and
yeah. If you ever accidentally shoot your weapon when you don't mean to, even in training, you're gone. If you ever get a DUI, you're gone. If you ever get if you ever like, you know, I mean, sometimes if you just like make some mistakes, you know, if you can't perform physically for like maybe 1 or 2 training events, you're gone. If you can't pass some schools that they need you to pass, you're gone. Like, you know, it doesn't matter how hard you work to get there. Like, you're always held to a very high standard. So it's stressful, but it's what makes you good at what you do. You know.
So when you're in the ready room and you know that you're with a group of guys that have been tested, and you know, they rely on you, you rely on them.
Yeah, I mean, from my first deployment, my team leader, I remember we were assaulting a compound in the middle of a kind of a small, medium-sized town probably, and you know, we took the lead, so we'd take turns being the lead, like, squad that would assault the building. You know, you kind of, from Vietnam days, it'd kind of be like being on point, you know,
Mm-hmm.
except for it was by squad.
Okay.
So, like, you know, the lead squad took contact from this window, and it was one guy, and, you know, and they're fighting this guy, and they took him out, like, you know, like I said, really, another video, really fast, you know, under 30 seconds, you know.
Yeah, wow.
But then we started taking fire from another position, you know, further away, and they were like shooting mortars, and they were grazing, it's called grazing machine gun fire. They're basically like shooting machine guns to like over the tops of the buildings, just kind of like you can see the tracers just going over there, and they're shooting mortars and stuff. And my team leader was like, you know, like, watch down that alleyway. And it was not like an important alleyway. No one had been there. No one had done anything. You know, I was like, you know, I was fairly inexperienced. I'd been on, I forget how many missions that was, a few missions, you know, at that point. But I'd been through all the training that we had gone through. I knew exactly what I was supposed to do. I knew exactly. And he said that and went there, and then like he may have glanced back at me a few times, but you know, it just struck me that one way when he was like, look down that alleyway. It struck me that he was like, you know, completely trusting me to like look down that alleyway. And it wasn't just like one thing where I'm waiting for one guy with a gun. I mean, it's like there's like multiple windows going up on either side. There's like a building at the very far end.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't tell me, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
didn't sit there and tell me everything I had to do. You know, there's no, you
Yeah.
can't micromanage people in situations like that. A lot of places in the military, people love to micromanage.
Right.
And probably some Rangers would love to too, but you just can't.
You just can't
know.
do it.
I hate micromanaging, so I love trying to get my guys to a place where I could be like, you know, look down that alleyway, and if I get shot, and you know, we're in an element that's far away from the main element, and I get shot, and I mean, like, every time I went out with someone, those guys, you know, I knew that my guys, you know, who weren't leaders at that point, they'd be fine.
Yeah.
They would be fine.
Yeah. When you, were there some missions where you were more certain than others that you were going to get into a scrap?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
But the worst mission I was ever on, we had no idea. But in general, like, sometimes you'd be like, okay, we got in one pretty big firefight in my third deployment, and that was like, we knew it was coming.
You knew it was coming.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you're in the ready room.
Yeah.
Then you go out to the helo.
You got a mission briefing.
Oh, mission briefing. Okay.
But you already know what's on it. You're supposed to already know what's going to be on it because
Okay.
you have a table like this size in the middle, and there's all these just photocopied papers of the same thing over and over, and you're just sitting there reading it while you know you're doing you're getting all your stuff ready. You don't put it on yet. Then you go to the mission briefing, come back, throw it on, and go to the helo.
Then you go to the helo.
Yeah.
And 20 minutes to your site, 20 minutes
Depends.
an hour? Just
Sometimes.
depends on where you're going.
I think I did 2 missions where we walked off the fob.
Really? The Fort Operating Base?
Yeah. And then I think we did maybe more, not much. You know,
Yeah.
I've done some ground missions and strikers.
Yeah.
Probably 70-80% of them have
Yeah.
been, you know, on a bird and on a helicopter, and it can range anywhere between 10 minutes and an hour flight, but generally it's going to be 20-30 minutes.
Okay, so you know, think back to that mission that you know that a fight's coming,
Mhm.
right? And so you get on the helo. I mean, so what's going on in your own mind? You know, let's say you're in the air for 20 minutes, pretty confident that you're heading into a fight. What's going through your head?
Everybody does something different. I
Yeah.
would, I'd pray, and then I'd fall asleep. Every time. I fell asleep before every mission until my last deployment. For some reason, I started staying awake a little bit more. Something about it, I just lights out. And
Really?
just probably a strange body reaction to, you know, maybe stress. I didn't feel all that stressed then yet, sort of, you know, but like, you know, but yeah.
Would you kind of, I mean, when the helo is starting to descend, would you automatically wake up, or would the guy next to you
When they do
wake
that,
you up, or-
they do like a 10-minute call, and when they
Okay.
do the 10-minute call, then I wake up. Sometimes I fall back asleep. When they do a 5-minute call, then I wouldn't fall back asleep.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So pray and
Obviously-
then fall asleep.
Yeah, pretty much.
So since you were asleep, I guess you didn't get to see what the other guys were doing, or did you have a sense of?
Yeah, we
what
talked
other
about it
guys-
and stuff, and some guys would do quite a few people sleeping was like they'd talk about it. They'd be like, yeah, I fall asleep every time too. Some guys will just stay awake, you know, you're just thinking, there's no, the time for learning and studying and thinking over the details is over. You know, it's, you know what you know at that point. You know, if you're missing something or you forgot to bring something, that's probably the whole thing you're thinking about the whole time. You're like, oh man, I hope I mean, my squad leader would always go by and be like, all right, you know, you got your guns, your bullets, your nods, you know, cool, you're good, radio, you're good. And then like, you know, your team leader checks you and everything. If you are a team leader, then you check them and your squad leader checks you. But like, so on and so forth. But you know, but generally speaking, I mean, you know, you don't. It's not as intense as I don't know. It's just it's very like. It's a different experience, I feel like, partially because, I mean, if you look at rates of, like, PTSD, especially unmanageable PTSD, a lot of it is guys who are coming from the draft, a lot of it is guys who don't have high amounts of training, and guys who don't know why they're there. So, I don't know, like, and I don't mean, like, in an existential, like, what's with the war, but I mean, like, specifically, like, who are we going after and why are we going after them? You know, and
which
like,
is a huge characterization of the Vietnam War. I mean,
right, exactly.
Guys,
yeah.
It's like, what is going on?
All three of those things. You know, it's like, sure. Yeah. And I mean, even if you come to the belief that you think it's great in the end, you're still having to question all that stuff is a big thing to wrestle with.
Do you think? I mean, let's let me pick up on that for a second. I mean, of the recent, you know, Iraq, Afghanistan. I mean. You know, as President Obama said, you know, Afghanistan is, I forget exactly the word, but the necessary war, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
Because that's where 9/11 was planned. Do you think, looking back, that in a way that's kind of, I don't know how to put it without sounding stupid, but I mean, do you think in a way that there's a certain advantage you have as a combat veteran from Afghanistan that, unlike the Vietnam guys, you know, there's so much ambiguity in that war and so much complication in that war. But for you guys, I mean, at least it was crystal clear where 9/11 was planned and that the Taliban was a definite problem that had to be solved, and Al-Qaeda and all that stuff.
I think
that
some
clarity
guys
is kind of helpful in a way.
I think some guys struggle with it on like the ground level. Some infantry guys that maybe don't know like what they're doing when they're doing like route clearances and stuff. Like they're driving, clearing IEDs and mines, and then eventually one of them blows up and kills your friend, and like you don't even like know who planted it or what's going on really, and like we're going like, you know, I remember one mission, we were like, you know, we learned this guy's name, we learned the name of his family, you know, his whole family, we like were learning, you know, we learned that this guy is like, you know, he's a Taliban commander who rose up in the ranks because he uses kids and like mentally disabled people as like suicide bombers. They don't know it, so they don't know what they're doing, you know, and you know, I just think that like, if you're going after a guy like that and your friend dies, it's a lot different than if you're going after even the same guy but you have no idea who he is or what his deal is. He's just some dude, and like your friend dies. It's a big difference. And then in conjunction with
that makes sense.
With training, you know, the biggest difference of having been a civilian in combat and having been a trained person in combat has been how useful I was. Is that like not having anything to do is like the worst feeling. You don't really know it because you're just scared, but like. You can put like fear and like all this stuff kind of in a box, and like it doesn't affect you when you have training to fall onto, and it's there. You're scared, but it just doesn't affect you like your body, you know. And and it's later in life you have to unpack that stuff.
Sure,
but
I hear that.
You know, some people don't. But
well, it's interesting. I mean, because I'm just as you're talking, and you know, you've got these definite missions. In some cases you have, you know, specific names, and you know exactly why you're going after this person. That is very different from most combatants I talk to who, you know, they're just following orders, and the whole world for them is me and the dude next to me, you know, and we really don't know what's going on. I mean, just psychologically, I can see there might be a certain benefit in that.
Oh yeah,
you
for
know,
sure.
If you can link these memories to specific missions that really did have a purpose.
Yeah,
and
totally.
State what that purpose was.
And on top of that, we're going after like commanders and stuff. We're not going after like foot soldiers.
Yeah.
There might be foot soldiers there, but we're, you know.
Now, combat vets. So now you're getting off the helo, and combat vets, I often hear them say that whatever nerves they had or whatever, I don't know if you had any, but whatever nerves they had, as soon as that first bullet flies, all that stuff goes away.
Yeah, I mean,
You think that's right?
yeah, I think so. I think I mean, I'm the type of person that like, I hate jumping, like jumping out of airplanes. I don't like it. I'm not scared of heights really, but like something about it, I don't like it.
It's not a natural act.
Right,
Yeah.
no, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that I don't like. I don't like, you know, having to have like a serious conversation with someone I care about something that like is like, you know, could be damaging, or that's something, you know, you like need to talk about.
Yeah.
I don't like anticipation. I don't like things. But once you're actually doing it, 9 times out of 10, like I don't like tests in school. You know, I don't like studying for them. But when I actually get in the test room
Yeah.
and all that's similar, it's you know, you're there, and it's like
yeah.
whatever you've got is what you've got, and like, you know, so I would say yeah, I was definitely scared, I'd say, but it does, like I said, it doesn't affect you, and you don't think about it. It's not like something you're wrestling with at all. It's just, you know, over there.
So what you just said brings another question to mind, and then we'll go to your force deployment, and then to this one mission in particular. You just said, you know, when you're in combat, you know, you're not thinking about it, and so I'll just kind of talk for a minute, and then I'm just interested in your response. You know, talking to war vets over the years, especially when I wrote this little book a number of years ago. You know, when I started studying war and talking to combat vets, I thought for sure, you know, I would hear a lot of stories about guys, you know, who are thinking about the big questions and the meaning of life, and, you know, because the possibility of death is right there, so I want to get ready for what's next. And what I found, and, you know, maybe my research, you know, misled me, but what I found was that actually in the world of war, there's not a lot of that going on. There's not a lot of heavy philosophy going on. There's not a lot of question asking, you know, about the big questions. Maybe sometime after the war, but
Yeah,
within the world of war itself,
I would tell my guys.
it's not going on.
Yeah, I'd tell my guys. I'd say figure out what you need to do, like what your boundaries are, what your lines are that you won't cross. You know, like how you feel about like shooting someone, how you feel about that. Figure that out before you get on a mission, because not because I don't want you to be thinking about it on mission, but because you won't be thinking about it on mission.
Yeah.
You won't be.
Yeah.
So like it's the most.
Yeah.
I don't know if you do much like meditating or like
I do, actually,
like
yeah.
prayer. You know, like it very much like you open your eyes and you're like, you realize you're in a physical room. You're very present. You know what I mean? You're very like, or a lot of just hiking outdoors sometimes can do that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like it's a lot of that. There's no more than being in the here and now than like I said before, literally being willing to give up your life just to get around a single corner or something.
Yeah.
You know, like.
You said on the helo you pray and then you go to sleep. What were those prayers made of?
I'd pray that we would be successful. I'd pray that if anyone got hurt, that it would be me. I don't know if I was like, I don't know if I believed. I always question whether I was being earnest in that statement, but I prayed it anyway.
You get like brownie points for praying that
Yeah,
kind
right,
of prayer?
exactly,
Yeah.
But I prayed it anyway. I thought it would be good, and I just prayed that none of my friends would get hurt mostly, and that you know, I always wanted us to be successful. I guess I didn't necessarily always pray that. Depends on who we were going after.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I always wanted us to be successful because we're pretty
Yeah.
much exclusively going after like some of the worst people in the world. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it. Yeah, just pretty much that.
Yeah. Well, let's go to that. You had 4 deployments, and you know we could talk about each one. And go ahead.
Just to characterize them real quick.
Sure.
First one was real busy. Springtime, which means springtime offensive. Lots of they're all the shadow commanders from the winter are being replaced by the commanders
Yeah.
that are coming back from Pakistan and coming over.
Which in the spring offensive, basically in Afghanistan, that just means it's springtime. It's spring, and therefore time to fight somebody.
Yeah,
Whether
no one's
it's the
fighting.
Russians or the Americans or one another, but we're going to be fighting somebody because it's spring.
You fighting because they're not fighting in the winter. I'm like
Yeah.
I don't blame them. I wouldn't with their equipment. I wouldn't fight in the winter either. No way.
But is that just part of the culture in Afghanistan? It's spring and time to fight.
Sort of. I mean,
we're going to just fight somebody, we'll fight each other, but we're, you know.
Sort of from a tactical perspective, though, like, I mean, the coldest mission I ever went on. So the thing that characterized my second deployment was how cold it was, because it was in the dead of winter. So I got frostbite on the mission once, and I got it minor. Some guys got it a lot worse. But like, I mean, you get in a firefight. First of all, if you don't have the right type of like lubrication on your weapon, and the coldest one we went on was negative 35 degrees.
Wow.
If you don't have lubrication on your weapon, I didn't shoot. We didn't get in a firefight. But when I cleared my weapon at the end, I took the magazine out and pulled it out, and my it didn't eject because it was frozen to the bolt face. So it's just so bullet's not coming.
Wow.
And like, so if you talk about that kind of cold weather, not only is equipment malfunctioning, especially for them, they don't have. I actually made a mistake. I was supposed to put on like sub-zero like lubrication that we have. They don't have that.
Okay.
And you're talking like you get in a fight, even if your guns are operating, you can't maneuver on an enemy element in that kind of cold. We can slowly, like through 4 feet of snow. You're not maybe like 3 feet of snow.
Yeah.
We can kind of. We're barreling through. But I mean, if they leave like a compound to like flank us, I mean, literally they could just freeze to death during the flanking maneuver. So in some of those mountains, a lot of them are hiding out in remote places, so it's like that town mission that I told you, that's atypical, it happens, but, so.
Okay, so you just characterize real quick your first 3 missions then.
Your
first 3 deployments.
Yeah, so first one was just busy, spring offensive, second one was really, really, really cold. That was, the third one was very political on all ends.
What do you mean by that? You mentioned that in something you wrote. What do you mean by that?
Obama was trying to get reelected. Our mission set changed because of that. So I don't know how long you want to get into it, but essentially, if there's always a risk of a civilian getting killed. I've seen well-placed shot ricochet off the inside of someone, ricochet off their bone, and kill someone next to them. So it was a perfect shot, but just like
you saw that.
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't see the person go down, but I saw. I was in a secondary assault element, and so then it came across.
You were there.
Yeah. So and like, I mean, you have a situation like that. It's absolutely terrible. But like, what happens is that there's an investigation. We can get shut down because of it. We get shut down, and the problem with that is like, I don't care if someone investigates me for a mission that I went on. Like,
sure. They
can investigate me all day. I'll clear investigations. Like, that's fine. But shutting us down is a big problem. Not because it's like, I mean, imagine you have a really, really crime-ridden neighborhood. You have organized gangs, and then cops aren't allowed to go there for 2 weeks. They're gonna like flourish as an organization, and that's what the Taliban will do. They'll start. You can sure. If you get shut down for investigation, you can bet you're gonna take contact the next mission that you're coming in. Maybe not, but probably, yeah. And so like, one of my guys who was one of my dudes for the last mission, he was a team leader, and they were slowed down so much that he went on 5 missions on one deployment, but every single one of them they got in huge firefights because because it's so sparse. They don't have any control over these regions. We're not knocking down the commanders. The commanders are like, we're not like arresting them and bringing them back or getting a fight, and taking them out. They're all just, running their organization, and so that's a big problem. And so basically what happens is that there's investigation. Karzai was the president of Afghanistan at the time, would get really angry more because it made him look good to get angry, and then
like he's taking on the Americans or something. Or?
Right. Yeah. And then and then I mean if a foreign nation is in my country and shooting, and I mean the report says they went on a mission and a civilian died, I'd be angry too. Not to say that I like Karzai, but then we sometimes would get like. Executive orders to get shut down, as like across the board sometimes. But that third deployment, so it's like all Rangers in Afghanistan are not going on missions because this guy up here, maybe like was taking fire just from a window, and so he fired back, and the guy had his family in there with him. You know.
Yeah, and I'm guessing the word gets to Al Qaeda or the Taliban, whoever it is you're going after. I'm guessing the word gets to them pretty quick. So now we have 2 weeks to regroup and
Yeah. Oh,
get our supplies all.
They definitely they know a surprising amount of stuff. Not as far as intelligence goes, but they'll know stuff like they have standard operating procedures about, like, especially in their upper echelon leadership, which is what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
That, like, you know, these guys they wouldn't know, you know, what unit we're from, but they would know that, like, you know, there's no, like, their commanders aren't getting, you know, arrested every night. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah. Now you guys never did operations with Afghan forces.
We did. Well,
Oh, you did?
That's not typically a Ranger's mission, though.
Okay.
But we would work with the Afghan Special Forces every deployment that I went on. That's typically more of a Green Beret mission as far as special operations go.
Okay.
But being that we're trying to be an advise, assist to just sort of the entire war, you know, everybody's going to deal with that. And so we dealt with Afghan Special Forces. Every deployment we'd have at least a few guys with us.
Just a quick characterization of them. Did you have confidence in them?
First deployment depends on the group you get. First deployment they were great. They were awesome. Good dudes, pretty tactically proficient, especially for the training that they had, and a lot of combat experience. Not necessarily, like, you know, applicable all the time, but, like, as far as just because they're training level. But you know, good guys. First deployment, second deployment, I don't really remember. I think they were fine. Third deployment, we kind of, like, had a problem with an insider guy who tried to, like, he was, like, gonna shoot the pilots of our helicopters while we were in, because he was, like, in with the Taliban.
Yeah.
That mission got canceled for weather, and so then he tried to convince his buddy to, like, shoot because we were always going to helicopters, to shoot the other pilot, and his buddy was like, no, I'm not gonna do that in tournament.
Sort of that green, what, blue on green, sort of.
Yeah, green on blue. Yeah.
Green on blue.
Yeah,
that problem.
So it was, you know, it was spring offensive, cold, like, political.
Political.
A lot of other political stuff, minor stuff. You know, like some guy in Florida burns a Quran, so now, like, you know, we're like, okay, things are gonna get bad for the next week or two. Like, you know, people are all fired up about it. I think that was actually my first deployment when that happened. But yeah, that actually affected our sort of concerns. I don't know how tangible the actual effects were, but we were definitely, like, you know, there were people who were talking about it that were, you know, like, the guys were going after. So
crazy.
And then the fourth deployment was a lot like the first, just less state missions.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's end this discussion here, and then we'll pick up with another one, and we'll focus on that fourth deployment. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right.
Cool.